Hey, ChairLife listeners, Chair World is just around the corner. February 1st, 2026, and I'm teaching 2 sessions this year. The first one, How to Find the Intersection Between Your Purpose and Practice, is Monday, February 2nd at 1:30 Pacific time. I really hope to see you there. The second session will be on Tuesday at 8:30 a.m., and it is called Best Practices to Optimize Your Time and Income to Build Your Ideal Practice. I hope you will register for these sessions now. Space is going to be limited. I'm really excited to see you. We've added in a lot of new information this year, and it's going to be great. So we'll see you at Chair World.
Welcome to the ChairLife podcast with Tom Cuthbert. As a CEO coach and master chair, Tom brings you the insights, strategies, and tools to help you build your chair life, where mission and purpose intersect with a balanced work life. This is the path to leading with impact while living with intention. Let's dive in. Here's your host, Tom Cuthbert.
Hello, ChairLife listeners, and welcome back to another episode of the ChairLife podcast. This month is January, and I have some good news and some bad news. The good news is it's a fresh start to a new year. The bad news is, according to Vistage, it's the top month where members give notice. And so this month is something that reminded me that we really need to be conscious of this and conscious of the value that our members are receiving in their group and in our community. Now, I don't want to be Debbie Downer here with some bad news, but I do think it's important that we take a minute and just talk about and think about how we're delivering value to our members and what are the signs that they're not experiencing it. To reinforce that, I'm going to step us through 12 signs that I've seen in my groups, maybe you've seen in yours, that could potentially lead to a member leaving our community. And then for some positive reinforcement at the end, I've got 5 key things that we can do to make sure that they're locked in. So let's jump in. I have to admit, last year was the highest turnover year of CEO members that I've had in 14 years of chairing. Now, there were 2 of 7 that left that had business exits, and that's great. We all celebrate that. And I had one that retired out, closed the practice and just decided to do something different with life. And then there were the others that left for reasons that, quite honestly, were a surprise to me and to their groups. That's not good, and surprises are not something that we want to have happen inside the groups. So let me step through some thoughts for you on some signs that we can see, especially at this time of year when there are a lot of members that may be reconsidering their participation in our community. Sign number 1 is the most obvious. It is attendance. When attendance drops below, call it 85 or 90%, that is a tip that whatever they're doing is more important than the time that they're spending in their Vistage group to them. We need to have a conversation around that. In our group, we track attendance directly on the placemat that's in front of all members. We bring it out in our member commitments. If they miss more than 2 meetings, we discuss it as a group. And so I do think it's easy for us to miss that and to say, well, they were busy with this or busy with that. But the reality is they're not going to get any value unless they're in the meeting. Number 2 is one-to-ones. Now, I know you're like me, and one-to-ones are a absolute must attend. And so in our world, we do everything we can to reschedule if a member needs to set that. But 2 things I would tell you are really important in that. One is make sure that your one-to-ones are scheduled as recurring one-to-ones. This gives members the most predictability when thinking about when they will be meeting with you. It's, for example, the 3rd Tuesday of every month at 3:30 in the afternoon, something like that. And so by giving them that predictability, by building that consistency in their calendar, they're more likely to attend. I made that change several years ago, probably 8 or 9 years ago now, and it's made a huge difference in our practice. The second thing, though, relating to one-to-ones is when they need to reschedule, and they do, make it easy for them to do that and be diligent in following up. I work really hard, and our team works really hard to make sure that no member misses a one-to-one. It may change to a Zoom or a phone call. It may change from an hour and a half to a 30-minute check-in, but I always want to speak to those members month in and month out. Number 3 is also not going to be a surprise. It is that the issues that are submitted are not submitted, or those that are submitted or brought to the group are not meaningful. Members want to process hard problems. They want to think and dig in to help other members and obviously themselves get value out of the group. We had a CEO group meeting today and we had 17 members in there and we processed millions of dollars of issues and it felt fantastic. The members loved it. They got a lot of value, whether it was their issue or not. And that's what a high-performing group does. And so we have to make sure we're prepping issues for members in one-to-ones and making sure they know that they get airtime when they prepare ahead of time and send it in for the other members to read before they get into the group meeting. Issues have to be significant and meaningful in order to create retention. Number 4 is those members that sit as spectators rather than participants. And you have them and I have them. There's certainly some that want to suck all the air out of the room by talking constantly, and we have to manage and facilitate that. And then there's a few others that sit in the corner and just take things in. Our job as facilitator is to look around the room and make sure that not only every voice is heard, but everyone is participating at the level that is maybe even a little outside of their comfort zone. Call on those people, bring them into the discussion so they feel invited in to say what they're thinking and feeling. And you know what? Many times those members have the strongest contributions or comments. Number 5 is our NPS score is declining or feedback is turning a little negative. I really appreciate that Vistage is such a feedback-rich environment. And while there's a lot of surveys that go out, particularly to our CEO members, the member surveys that go out give us good insights into the group. We take time to read those, listen to those, and talk to members about their feedback, asking them directly and then reading those surveys to see when there's a negative turn in our NPS score or when comments about speakers or about meetings or one-to-ones turn negative. We need to address that, listen to our members, and use all of the tools available to do so. Number 6 is how many people do your CEOs have in development groups? Emerging Leader, Advancing Leader, Key Group, and now for us, Spark City Academy. We have over 85% of our CEOs have multiple people, averaging 1.5 people per person in our development groups. And that to me is a pretty healthy sign. Those that don't have people in there are maybe a small company or the people are remote. And so we've referred them out to other chairs around the country. But that's a big deal. And that's something that high-performing members do. Vistage tells us when we have people in development groups, they're 26% more likely to stay with the company. And I have certainly seen that to be true. It also gives me great insight into the CEO's life and world by working with people on their team. So take a look, run a report. And as you go through the org charts of your CEO members, check off the people that you think should be in there and have those conversations with the CEO. That investment into that team member will not only help the CEO with their team, but it will help you in a retention standpoint from Vistage. Number 7 is their goals are not shared. Now, all of our members submit goals at the end of the year on my website, as I spoke about a few episodes ago, tomcuthbert.com/goals. We have members put goals in. We put them on the back of placemats. We talk about them on a recurring basis. We keep them in front of us. And I, in some cases, as I'm sure you do too, have to really force members to do this. But it's a commitment that they make when they join our community. And by doing so, by knowing their goals and investing ourselves deeply into helping them achieve those goals, guess what? They're going to feel better about their participation in our community, and our relationship will really help them achieve that. We want our members to be achievers. And by knowing what their goals are, we can help them do that. There's another measure. I've talked about our community being a referral community. And so we track who is referring and who is not referring, and even how frequently they're referring. And periodically we'll look back on that. Members that refer consistently are members that are bought in. They're high-performing members that believe in our community and want to share it with others. Some members may be a little more hesitant to refer, and we certainly don't expect that when they're early on in their journey. But down the road with us, we do want to see members referring other people in, whether that's to our community or to a community somewhere around the country where we could place them with another great chair. So referrals and the number of referrals that come in is a measure or an indicator potentially of someone maybe starting to get a little less value out of Vistage. It's something for us to look at. Number 9 is tight budget, and certainly through 2025, which was a tough economic year for many companies, there are a lot of companies that are cutting back. When you hear this conversation, talk to them directly about it. Don't avoid it. Bring it up with them. Because yes, there's a lot of things that we can do to cut costs inside our companies, our member companies, things that we can do to help them do so. I have a sheet on my website at tomcuthbert.com/cost cutting that gives 90 ways to cut costs inside a company. We talk about it every October, and I had a podcast episode on that. And so when you give them resources to think about cutting costs, they can cut costs, but we don't want them to cut the investment of Vistage because of the value that they should be getting out of it. It is, however, our job to make sure that they are getting value of that out of our community and out of our time together. Number 10 is a health one, directly related to burnout. Members are pushing themselves really hard, and we have to model balance for them and help them and notice when this is happening in their lives. They're going to make choices about taking time off with family over Vistage. And you know what? That's fantastic. But they need to be thinking about doing that on a regular basis and not missing Vistage just because it's the easiest thing to miss. We need to talk to them about scheduling time off, scheduling vacations, giving themselves breaks on weekends, having work-life balance, not working over a weekend, not emailing at 2:00 in the morning. These are unhealthy habits. And yes, I know they're running companies. And for someone that spent many years doing the same thing, it's hard to balance that. But it can be done. And our job is to help them see ways to do that and facilitate that so that their burnout doesn't affect their participation in Vistage and therefore the performance and success of their company. Number 11 is feedback avoidance. So you get a lot of, yeah, I get that. Okay, what else? Just kind of ready to move on. They're not as deeply engaged in a conversation in the group, in a one-to-one with the speaker. They seem a little more checked out. They don't want to have a conversation with you. And so when we observe that, again, we need to lean in quickly. Craig Weber taught us through conversational capacity, it takes the plane down when we don't lean in and have hard conversations. And as Vistage chairs, our job is to model that. Don't hesitate with that. Lean in, ask those probing questions. I feel like there's something behind what you're saying to me. I'm concerned about what you're not saying to me and wanted to give you an opportunity to say what you're thinking and feeling. This is our job, and it's our job to help them see things that they're not seeing. And one of those things can be a lead to burnout and a lead to avoiding wanting to talk about it, or a lead to even not wanting to talk about what they're not getting out of Vistage. We need to know. I'd rather know, and I'd rather be able to help them make the best decision. And we're certainly not going to beg them to stay or even encourage them if that's not what's best for them. We want what's best for them. However, our job is to make sure that we are having the hard conversations. And number 12 is when your group starts talking about other members in this regard. The member will pull you aside and they'll say, hey, I'm worried about Dave. I'm worried about Cindy. I'm worried about Sue. They're seeing things in their life, in their accountability teams, or in conversations that they're having in a group meeting or a get together, where they're maybe seeing things that you're not. And so a strength of a group is to be helping and listening and encouraging the other members around them. Our CEO groups with 17 members or so each know that their job is to invest in the lives of the other 16 people and really make sure they're listening and offering to help them. When they do that, you'll get a heads up. In our groups, we also have ambassadors, and I had a podcast on this as well. You can search. Having an ambassador in the room is just one member whose job it is to really listen carefully, reading the check-ins, talking to members, asking probing questions apart from the one-to-one, apart from the group meeting, and making sure they're listening to ways to help keep people on track. Well, I promised 5 ways to retain them, so here they are. Number 1, spot it early and act fast. Check-ins with one-to-ones, asking probing questions. How are you feeling on a 1 to 10? Reading survey data and reports will help find those issues before they happen. Number 2, reignite the value proposition. That should be in every meeting. Go back to episode 33. I talked about why we put dollar values on every issue. Today in the meeting, I mentioned we processed $6.4 million. And that's a meaningful amount. And for the handful of members that had their issues processed today and gained that amount of value, that pays for a lot of Vistage. And so keeping that in front of them, helping them see and understand and experience the value of Vistage will do that. One other way that they can experience the value is to encourage them to have their direct reports bring other direct reports into the meeting. I love it when a CEO will bring their chief operating officer into a group meeting and hear a speaker. And the speakers being open to doing that, they love that. As long as there's space in the room, we want them to bring people in. And that's just another way that they can get value. Number 3 is personal outreach. Don't let yourself only communicate with members during group meetings and during one-to-ones. I literally look through the list of members, send random texts, check in, make calls, just to see how they're doing. And they notice that when we're just there for them. I think that's such an important thing to do. Number 4 is really boost the belonging part of it. Work with your ambassador and the key members and longtime members to celebrate the wins of other members, to have fun hosting events, to get together between meetings and do things that they enjoy doing. Make them feel welcome and appreciated. And number 5, and this is the most important, deliver excellence, deep issues, consistent presence in the room, relentless vetting of members. Make yourself and the group and Vistage indispensable to them. When they can't live without us, then we know that they're going to be with Vistage and with our community for a long time to come. So I hope that was helpful for you. Look back over your members, check in and see where they are. And I wish you all the best in the coming year in 2026.
Now it's time for Tom's tips and tricks to optimize your productivity and your chair life.
In a past life, I was traveling constantly, East Coast and West Coast and in between, 2 to 3 weeks a month for several years, venture-funded company, a lot of trade shows, a lot of meetings. It was pretty exhausting. And, now as I look back on that, and it was many years ago now, it was all a blur, with the exception of one single train ride. I will never forget this ride from Boston to New York on Amtrak. Now, this was at a time when Amtrak was so easy to use between Boston and New York. I mean, sure, you can fly, but I always found Amtrak to be a relaxing way to travel and a lot of fun, and you meet some interesting people. And so I would do that a lot when I'm on the East Coast corridor, and many of you may do that as well. But on this particular day, I was sitting in a bulkhead, one of those sections on the train where there's 6 seats, a table in front of you, and 3 people on one side and 3 people on the other. And the train was just about to leave on a rainy day in Boston. And the last person on the train was a disheveled older guy, and he had his raincoat wadded up under his shoulder and his book, big book with papers hanging out of it, and satchels thrown over his shoulder and stuff hanging out of that. He was kind of a disheveled mess, to be honest with you. And he sat at our bulkhead as the 6th person, and me and the others were sitting there working and reading and just getting ready for a couple-hour train ride. Well, as we pulled out of the station, he looked up at us and he said to the person to his left, "Hey, what do you do?" And the gentleman said, "I don't know, I'm in advertising or something." And he proceeded, the older gentleman, the disheveled gentleman, to kind of go around the table and asked each of us, "What do you do?" And I was last, sitting directly across from him. And so I told him, "Hey, I'm a CEO at a tech company and traveling back to New York tonight for some meetings tomorrow." And he waited. And I asked him what he wanted me to ask him, which is, "What do you do, sir?" And he looked up and he smiled with a gleam in his eyes. And he said, "I invent things." And then we all kind of looked up at him and said, "Invent things?" And then one of the folks at the table said, "Well, maybe there's something that you've invented that we're familiar with," kind of laughing to ourselves. Turns out the gentleman said, "Well, maybe you do. Are you familiar with the stent?" "The stent?" I said. "Yeah, a stent." And a stent is just such an incredible invention that has saved millions of lives and prolonged millions of lives. He said, "Yeah, I invented the stent. My name is Dr. Robert Fischel." And so we all looked up and looked at this disheveled gentleman with papers hanging out of his briefcase and thought, wow, that is pretty impressive. And no matter what it is that each of us did at that moment, it was not as impressive as what Dr. Fischel said. Well, about Dr. Fischel, he's a physicist, over 200 patents, a BS in mechanical engineering from Duke, a master's in physics from Maryland, a doctorate in 1996. He built not only the stent, but the rechargeable pacemaker, which was sold, by the way, to Siemens, utilized today at St. Jude and many others. He built an implantable insulin pump and, of course, the coronary stents. He was telling us some of these things, and we were now engaged with him and really excited to hear from him when his phone rang. And he answered a call, and he said, okay, great. Yeah, okay, good. I'm glad it worked out like that. Click, and he hung up. And he said, hey, that was a doctor in Seattle. They just implanted the very first new invention that I had of an epileptic seizure warning system that's implanted in the head. And the very first patient, human patient, had it implanted in Seattle, and they just called to let me know that the surgery was successful. Now, all of a sudden, the way that we saw Dr. Fischel from the way that we saw him when he boarded the train was completely different. Sitting across from me was a 2016 National Medal Technology winner, a 2005 TED Prize for Medical Innovations. I mean, this is a guy that has done an incredible amount of things. And so we had a great conversation, and I really appreciated how humble he was in the work that he did. He does work for people, not for himself. He is certainly someone that is working and living his passion, an absolute genius in the work that he does. So I was so fortunate to meet Dr. Fischel, and I imagine the other people in our bulkhead that night were as well. But you know what I learned from this moment? It made me think back to a quote from Albert Einstein that said, the important thing is not to stop questioning. Curiosity has its own reason for existing. And his curiosity, he is the one that started asking us, what do you do? He was curious with us. And what we did was nothing in compared to what he did, although he did make us feel that way. As I reflect on that train ride many years ago, as I reflect on Dr. Fischel and the work that he did and how impactful it was, I'm just reminded that it started with a simple question. What do you do? And some curiosity of caring. And that created this opportunity for me to meet someone whose genius has impacted so many lives and maybe my life one day directly. So I say that to you as a tip. Don't hesitate to simply be curious all of the time. And ask someone, what do you do? You'll be amazed who's around us.
Thanks for listening to the ChairLife podcast. Remember, you can find more resources at tomcuthbert.com. Please let others know about our podcast by sending them to chairlifepodcast.com. See you next time on the ChairLife podcast.